Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Chief Strategist of Pulse Programs at Gainsight, Ruben Ravago.
Good afternoon. We're headed on the home stretch here. Before I introduce our next session, I'm going to need your help. You're going to help actually give away one of these pairs of Wembley tickets. Yeah, this is the exciting part here. So we've had a photo contest, and there's been a very serious committee going on to decide, and it's been led by the mysterious man named Stone. And he has selected his committee has selected 4 photos. So if you could please pull out your Slido app and let's go ahead and show the photos at this point. Begin to vote on your fan favorite here. So photo A, what other CS conference offers unlimited ice cream? The Dream. Photo B, it's a bit like silent disco, except nobody is dancing. Maybe everyone is saving their best moves for the after party. Photo C, say what? Hashtag embrace technology, structuring renewals, and helium in the house. Nice. Photo D, when CS meets CX, only great things happen. All right, so place your votes. There's some football tickets in play here. Can we flip over to the Slido, see how we're doing on the votes? Oh, wow. Photo B's winning here. Or is it A? All right, let's flip it back one more time so everybody can take a look at the photos again. We're going to end voting here on my count in 3, 2, 1. All right, and the final result is? Oh, come on. All right. Can we open it back up again? Let's close it. Let's go back to the photos. We need to do a few more seconds of voting, it looks like. All right. We'll try this again. 3, 2, 1. And it is photo B. Congratulations. So the prize is a pair of tickets to the England versus USA football game on Thursday, the 15th of November at 8 p.m. We will message you on the app and for next steps on how to attain those tickets. Now, as for our next session, our next speaker has been a Pulse fan favorite and a longtime friend of Gainsight. So please help me welcome to the stage the Chief Executive Officer of TSIA, Mr. J.B. Wood.
Thanks, Ruben. Did anybody win that? Who won? You won? Shit. Can we be friends? Just for a couple days? Let me ask you a question. How many of you think that your company should be spending even more money on customer success activities? Okay? Almost everybody. You know what? Me too. Me too. I'm J.B. Wood. I run an organization called TSIA, the Technology Services Industry Association. We're a membership organization of 400 of the biggest tech companies in the world, all of whom have agreed to go under non-disclosure and give us access to information about their business practices and the results that they get. And we aggregate all these practices and all these results, and we have data scientists and industry experts who look at it, and we're trying to answer a simple question. What works? What practices actually work better than other practices, and what results are they driving. And then we help these 400 companies understand what practices they should be implementing and what results they should be getting. And we do that across 10 different areas. All the services like professional services and support, customer success, subscription sales, X as a service product management. And we're able to get this data and these insights in a way that I don't think anybody else in the world can get. But what's interesting is the commonality. You know, everything in this industry that's growing today is in an as-a-service business model. Now, we've been talking a lot at this conference about SaaS, but it's not just SaaS. It's about managed services. It's about consumption services, device as a service. Do you know that HP Enterprise will go to a customer and build an entire on-premise data center and only charge them for what they consume? Think about that. Who would have guessed 10 years ago that HP would be putting an entire on-premise hardware, software data center on a subscription consumption model? Why? Because customers love these models, and everybody is running to them. But these models are new math. Now, SaaS companies that have been born in the cloud, you're familiar with this, yeah? This waterfall, right? The revenue waterfall. Everybody in SaaS knows this, but for the big, large technology companies that are pivoting, this is a new world. This new math is critical, and it is forcing everyone to change how they operate. And unfortunately, for some people in this room, it is not a fair battlefield. The SaaS companies have only got to do one thing, which is grow. The traditional companies who have value investors, who have shareholders who've gotten dividends and they expect to continue to receive dividends, they've also got pressure to grow their subscription business, grow their recurring revenue, but they've also got to deliver the quarterly profits that their shareholders have come to expect. It's a tougher job for them. There is absolutely no doubt about it. If you had to pick between being at a company where you're only being measured on growth or where you're being measured on growth and delivering historically acceptable profits, which do you think would be an easier game to play? But I would submit to you that all of us are ultimately on the same journey, because at some point, this SaaS business model has got to turn profitable. Okay? Now, the question is, I have a second question. How many of you think that your company's got this future all figured out? Okay, not one, right? I don't think anybody's got it all figured out. But what we know, that being profitable in the future in these business models is going to be around a next generation customer engagement motion across sales, implementation, adoption, expansion, renewal, a model that looks very, very different from the models of the past, and a model that I would submit to you is not fully baked, that we're all on a journey. Everybody in this room is co-authoring the future of the industry, because we're all learning together, we're all making mistakes. We have a really unique view on this because we're working with so many of you, as I said, under NDA. We see the screw-ups. We see what works well. But ultimately, landing, adopting, expanding, and renewal is being reinvented. And I would submit to you that many of the executives at our company, whether it is at your company, whether you are a traditional company pivoting to X as a service, or whether you are a born-on-the-cloud company, but who many of the leaders came from traditional companies in the past, that there is not necessarily an adequate recognition of how fundamentally different this customer engagement model of the future is going to be. At my company, we love to draw pictures. We're really, really big on pictures and frameworks. And these are pictures and frameworks that we give to you guys to tell business model stories, to be able to go and explain and educate internally about this transition, the significance of this transition, where you are in this transformation. And I want to give one to you today to begin to use internally. We think it's been very, very helpful for a number of companies. Now, first of all, what is this TSIA, the LAER model? How many of you have heard the LAER expression? Yeah, okay, most of you. So around 2009, we started to draw a picture of what this customer engagement model was going to need to look like. And we said, look, there's still going to have to be somebody out there landing a new logo customer. You know, I mean, sales isn't going away. Somebody has to go out there and land that new logo. But once that changes, and that is going to transform, but that's a subject for another day. But once that happens, everything changes. We're going to now take this customer and we're going to put them on a platform. And that platform is going to use data to begin to describe the use of our product, to begin to predict the future behavior of the customer, and to begin to articulate the business outcome, the business impact that your solution has had on the customer. And that data and those analytics are going to drive the activities of both our success teams and our service teams. And that data, the analytics, and those motions are then going to launch a series of very, very targeted sales motions designed to renew, designed to expand, upsell, cross-sell. It's going to be a scientific process of systematically driving the revenue growth of customers. By the way, one caveat, one definition. You're going to hear me use the word land a lot today. Our definition of land is not just net new logo. Right? Now, certainly getting a net new logo customer is land. But we also say major upsells and cross-sells. Major upsells and cross-sells also fall into this bucket of land. Okay? So sometimes the adopt and the expand teams and the data and the insights are going to trigger us to send a salesperson out to do the next big land at that customer. But other times, they're going to trigger activities of renewal specialists, upsell specialists, cross-sell specialists, targeted salespeople. Now this right here is an interesting picture, right? A model that you can go to explain to people how this whole thing is supposed to go work. But what we've discovered over the last couple of years is that there are common phases that companies go through on this journey to becoming what we call LAER efficient. And you would expect that there's got to be a level zero. And in our case, level zero is a traditional transaction business. Let's face it, until a decade ago or less, virtually all technology solutions were sold as assets. Right? Doesn't matter whether you were a consumer or whether you were a business, you bought assets, hardware assets, software assets. And that model was very, very well understood. But then all of a sudden, you say, okay, for one reason or another, I got to start to move my model. I want to start looking at this whole LAER concept. And so you go into a phase that we call LAER experiment. And I'm going to talk about these phases. And once you've kind of got a successful experiment, you say, boy, we need to scale this and become effective. And most people think that's the end. And I'm here to argue today that is not the end. The end is becoming LAER efficient. And I'll tell you why I think that. Now, what's most interesting is that we've looked across all these companies, born in the cloud companies, traditional companies, and we've found 5 markers, just 5. You know how your mom could put her hand on your forehead and tell when you were sick, right? We found just 5 things that we can ask you, and based on the answers, we can sort of tell you where your company is on this journey to becoming LAER efficient. The first is, what are the performance metrics that your customer success organization is being held accountable for? The second is, what are the core practices that your customer success organization is trying to implement today? The third is, where does customer success sit in the organizational structure of the company? The fourth is, what do the compensation models look like for frontline CSMs and frontline salespeople? And the fifth, what is the culture that exists between sales and success and services? Right? And with those 5 markers, we have found with a high degree of accuracy, we can tell you where you are on this journey. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on level 0, right? The traditional transactional model, sell assets. But if you look at those things, any of you who've ever worked at a hardware or software company that sold traditional assets, those things all look really familiar to you, right? Everybody's worried about what we're going to book for the quarter. Did we attach service contracts to all the product sales? Sales and services were 2 completely separate organizations, and there was no doubt that sales owned the customer, right? This is a model, this was the model in all of tech. And you know what's interesting? It was profitable. It was profitable. It gave us Oracle. It gave us Microsoft. It gave us Cisco. Those companies were both fast-growing and profitable all the way. Oracle was profitable at $50 million, and they, 1 quarter when they had a little problem with the SEC. Other than that, they never, ever, ever had an unprofitable quarter, starting at $50 million in revenue. So this model was a beauty. It worked great. But most companies have started to move off of that square. Maybe it's because you left and went to work at a SaaS company and they don't even want that model. Or maybe it's because you work at a traditional company who is pivoting over to selling their solutions in an as-a-service model. And you recognize that things in the customer engagement life cycle have to look different. So these 5 markers, how do they look for a company who's in the LAER experiment phase? Well, the first is, what are the main KPIs that the customer success organization is focused on? Well, we're counting churn. We realize that if customers don't renew, we're in trouble, so we better start counting churn. And the second is, we better get a customer health score. Because if we can't predict the churn in time, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on why these are the 2 core metrics for a customer success organization in the experiment phase. You know all this stuff. You know why churn matters. And you can get this deck and go through it. You know why a customer health score is important. And again, we've put links to all the content here where you can read more about these if you're curious. But the reality is those 2 KPIs, customer health and renewal rates, are the core of an early stage customer success organization. And what are the practices they're focused on? An adoption framework. What does healthy adoption look like? And customer journey mapping. What is the journey that we want to take people on? Now, what's interesting, and this is where it starts to get a little bit dicey. We just had an event like this, TSIA in Las Vegas. We had a couple thousand executives in there, and we ran some polls. And we said, how many of you have a customer success organization that has a formal documented framework for assessing customer adoption? 3/4 of the people, and these include the biggest tech companies in the world, 3/4 of those companies said they did not have a documented framework for assessing customer adoption. We know what a good framework looks like, right? It's not voodoo art. We know how to go do it. But companies that are in the experiment phase have not yet successfully implemented. Same thing with customer journey mapping. We know how to go do that. But again, the vast majority of people in this phase are just beginning to go do it. Another thing is, where is it organized? Now, I made the mistake of, at one point, giving a speech saying that at many companies, customer success was an art project. And what I meant by that is that really, in order to successfully drive adoption across the entire installed base of customers, they probably need hundreds, or maybe, depending on how big they are, thousands of CSMs, and they have 24. And they're sitting over here in this organization, they're touching this much of the customer, right? We call it little c customer success. But the interesting question is, where does that sit in the organization? Is it sales? Is it a part of the sales organization? Is it a part of the services organization? We look at that as part of this assessment of where we should be, and we're going to talk about the evolution of the organizational structure of customer success a little bit later on. And then we look at the comp of the frontline people. In the experiment phase, the CSMs are primarily comped on adoption metrics, health scores, number of accounts or percentage of accounts onboarded, the percentage of accounts that have a customer accepted success plan, right? Those are the variables that the CSMs are held accountable for, and the salespeople own the numbers. The salespeople own the land. They still do most of the expand. They do still most of the renewal. And the culture between sales and customer success is getting a little dicey. Sales is like, who the hell are these people and why are they in my account, right? And if there is a problem, it's my account, but it was your job to make sure this customer adopted, right? And so we put this slide up and we asked the people in the room, how many of you would say that this describes the culture at your company? 76% said that that is a good representation of the culture between sales, success, plus services, right? Sales views it as my account. You guys are working in my account. Get in there, do your job, don't screw it up, right? And if it does, I'm going to come knocking at your door. So in the experiment phase, sales continues to dominate. They do the land, they do the expand, they do the renew, and customer success has got the charter of adopt. Make sense? Okay. So let's say you do that and you say, geez, we start running these plays and, and all of a sudden the churn gets less. And we start running these plays and the time to value gets faster. We should do more of this. We're going to move from LAER experiment to LAER effective. What are the hallmarks of being LAER effective? First is the metrics begin to change. We don't just start counting customers who churn. We start counting retention of the dollars at risk, right? Churn is not the only evil we battle. Your products may cost less per customer or per seat a year from now than they do today. You may have some customers who don't renew with as many subscribers as they did today, right? So we're not only trying to save customers, we're trying to save the revenue associated with those subscriptions, and we begin to start thinking about better ways to expand the spending. So in effect, on this revenue waterfall, the concerns start to drift to the right. Customer success isn't just worried about how many customers churn. They worry about the total retention of the pool of dollars. They start to focus on how many expansion dollars they can get out of those customers. Because at the end of the day, you can't just be flat, right? You can't just renew all the dollars at 100% and be satisfied. You got to offset all the churn, all the downsell with upsells and cross-sells so that at the end of the day, the total spending of your base of customers goes up, not down. And customer success in LAER Effective begins to take on some of those responsibilities. The practices that you're focused on begin to change. You start looking at your renewals practices. Are we doing all the right things to optimize renewal? Do we have the right process, the right people, the right technology to get those renewals done? We start to monetize customer success. Not customer success as a giveaway part of the product, but monetized customer success. We start to drive advanced, sophisticated success planning for customers. And fourthly, we realize that expanding customer spending is a team sport. It is not just the responsibility of the sales rep to expand the spending of the customer. It is everybody's job. Not even just sales and success, but sales, success, professional services, customer support, you name it, everybody begins to play a role in driving the expansion of the spending of the customer. As I said, these practices are well known. We know what a great renewals motion looks like. We know what technology you need to go do it. We know what kind of people and process you need to go do it. And there are huge variations. The difference, as you know, between a 90% renewal rate and a 98% renewal rate might be the difference about whether your company makes it or not, right? Every point of renewal is critically important. We also are now seeing more and more companies who are in part funding their customer success activities because they're creating fee-based premium customer success offers. Offers that customers are paying subscription dollars to purchase and renew along with their license subscriptions. Despite the fact that there are really great examples of all the service lines that we track, customer success is least often reported as being a profitable activity. And I would submit to you, if the past is any indication of the future, if we want our companies to spend more and more and more on customer success, the only way to be in control of our destiny is to begin to drive revenue streams that support whatever money we're given by the corporation for customer success to go deeper, stronger, bigger, badder for those customers who want that kind of hand-holding. We asked this question a couple years ago. Does your company monetize any customer success? 2 years ago, the answer was 21% said yes. The answer a couple months ago was 45% of the companies in the room are now monetizing customer success. Believe me, this can be done. I mean, let's face it. If you had to go sell a customer one of two offers, a traditional support and maintenance contract, or a premium customer success subscription, which one do you think would be easier to convince the customer of the value of? Right? Because customer success drives business outcomes for the customer. Support was an insurance contract. If something went wrong with the product, they had somebody to call, right? And yet, in enterprise software, we were attaching support contracts, fee-based support contracts, to virtually every license deal, right? It can be done, but we have to start defining these advanced offers, pricing them, and having the courage and the incentives for sales to go out and attach these to the subscriptions. But it's happening. It's doubled in just the last couple of years. We all know that success plays for individual customers is a gigantic advantage, right? It not only improves our business outcomes, but it also improves the customer's business outcomes, right? We are becoming more of the experts. You know, it used to be customers sat down and drew up an RFP, right? And they handed the RFP to all the sales guys from all the companies that were interested. And then they went back and tried to do unnatural acts to convince the customer that their software could really do all those things. But the world is changing. Customers are turning to us and saying, you guys should be the domain experts. You tell me how to best use your product. You tell me what best-in-class business processes look like around your product. And so these success plays are directly related to the business outcomes of the customers. And oh, by the way, if they get the business outcomes they want, you get the business outcomes you want. You get the renewal, you get the expansion, you get the next. So we see LAER effective companies scaling success plays widely. The other thing we see, as I mentioned before, is this recognition that growing the customer is a team sport. At your company, who talks to customers more? Sales or success and services? Right? Success and services probably talks to the customer 10 times, as many times in a given year, maybe more, than the salesperson might talk to the customer. Sales is great, but they've got their highest and best use, and their highest and best use may not be a $1,200 a month add-on to a subscription contract. But all of our people, our success people, our services people who are working with these customers every day see all kinds of needs that those customers have for small things. Maybe it's a little bit of a consulting advisory engagement. Maybe it's our analytics module. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Let's take the handcuffs off, and LAER effective companies are learning how to do that. Take the handcuffs off everybody and allow people to make recommendations to the customer about other spending that could help them with their business outcomes. We also see LAER effective companies starting to feel their place out in the organizational structure. Most of them are landing inside of the services organization, where they are sitting with peers in support services, education services, consulting services, a new area that we call success science, which is a team of people who are studying why your top customers have been so successful and trying to figure out how to replicate that success across the base. But customer success organizations become real in the LAER effective world. And the compensation of the CSMs begins to change. All of a sudden, they're not just being compensated for adopt. They might be compensated for adopt and renewal of their accounts and starting to pivot over into having some incentives or at least some reporting around expansion. But LAER effective companies, and I'm going to tell you, my company, we have written 8 books on this topic. We advise all these companies, and we eat our own cheese. I have got a problem right now where my sales guys, sales folks, and my customer success folks are not commonly, but too often, in my view, arguing over where the customer spends money, who got a cross-sell, right? Because they both have incentives to go do this. And so we have the customer, the salespeople saying, he took my booking. And we have customer success people saying, that's bullshit. He didn't do anything. I did all the work on that deal. We should get credit for that. I'm trying to figure out, as the CEO of the company, how to get rid of that, right? So I know where we are. We're in the LAER effective world. But what you see is sales clearly still owns land right? Sales and marketing. But you see customer success moving right. Customer success is becoming responsible for more and more and more of the adopt, expand, renew outcomes for the company. But that's not the end. Even if you can do that, the job isn't done. You know why the job isn't done? Because even the companies who are doing that today are still usually unprofitable. Unprofitable. I would submit to you, in your future, one of your primary charters is going to be to drive down the overall company's cost of sales and marketing. That customer success is the secret weapon to drive down the total sales and marketing spending of the company, and that you will start to look at that, care about that, and start to think about CAC, KEC, and Kirk. Everybody heard of CAC, KEC, and Kirk? Customer acquisition cost, customer expansion cost, customer renewal costs, right? Cloud companies, on average, are spending 68% more money on sales and marketing than the traditional companies that they're out to replace. The traditional companies, the large companies, spending on average 22%. Cloud companies, on average, spending 68% more. This is the sales and marketing as a percentage of revenue for a whole bunch of tech companies. Look at the companies on the right. Box, Splunk, New Relic, HubSpot, Zendesk, ServiceNow, Salesforce. Look at those huge sales and marketing costs. There's two reasons why these business models are not yet profitable. One is the gross margins on SaaS are not as good as the gross margins on licensed software, right? Which we'll talk about in a second. And secondly, the sales and marketing costs are through the moon. Salesforce.com, the poster child, has been running at about 54, 55% cost of sales, right? Tough to make a profit if 54 or 55% of all your revenue is going just to the sales and marketing function. Now again, you can argue with that, lots of logic and reasons why that's okay. I think ultimately we have got to be like our predecessors, be able to grow and be profitable at the same time. And these buckets of where the money goes, as I mentioned, the gross margins are not as good in the SaaS business model. We have hosting and data center costs that we didn't have when we were shipping, tapes out to customers for them to own the asset. We have included these basic bundled customer success costs, right, that goes along with the subscription. You get this as part of your subscription. And so we're not seeing the 94, 95, 96% gross margins that we used to see in enterprise software. We're seeing 72, 74, 76, 78% gross margins in SaaS. But as I mentioned, the biggest thing is looking at these sales and marketing costs and saying, we have got to get that number down, and we're going to do that by dissecting our sales and marketing costs into three buckets. What does it cost to acquire a new logo? What does it cost to expand an existing customer? And what does it cost to renew an existing customer? Who does it? How much are they spending? How can we get that number to go down, 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 and not up, 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 and still be growing our revenue? And I would submit to you, customer success is a central role. Customer success is going to be the engine for driving down the expansion costs, driving down the renewal costs, and because eventually monetizing, reducing the amount of money the company has to spend on the basic bundled subscription, because the basic bundled customer success, because more customers are adding a premium offer that's monetized. So customer success can play in three ways to help the company financially. And we've got to get there. We can't just count customer outcomes and even revenue as the only metric. When you get to be LAER efficient, you are helping drive the cost structure of the company down. At the same time, you're helping driving the spending of customers up. And again, we know landing new customers is very, very, very expensive. And for the foreseeable future, although I do believe this will change, but for the foreseeable future, it's going to be hard to drive down the cost of net new logo deals. But we can and have got to drive down the retention cost and the expansion cost. If every deal runs out through the sales force, every expand and every renewal, then you've got the expensive sales channel across all of your revenue. But if you can break them apart, right, you know there are a lot of renewals where there really is no sales cycle, where the customers are highly adopted, they are highly engaged, and of course they are going to renew. Why would we send a salesperson in to renew that deal, right? The processes begin to change. We start to do customer success not as an art project, but all segments, all products, all geos. Let me just ask, how many of you are doing customer success across all customer segments, all products, all geos? Okay. 5%, right? At this level, you're doing it. You are doing what we call offer journey mapping, and you are tracking, you understand the lifetime value of every deal you take on. Look, we know by piecing together all of these companies that we've studied, we know what we think the end state looks like. What is the full in-flight customer success organization? What are its capabilities? How is it delivered? How is it analyzed? Is it metriced? How is it marketed? We think we know what these things are. We also think we know how to pay for it. This is scaling, this is funding customer success if the only role is adoption. At the highest level, we're talking about scaling customer success by funding not only the adoption of customers, but revenue streams for the company at a reduced sales cost. And the model for funding customer success becomes much different and is a bigger business case. We also know that we've got to start getting product management to think about the broader journey of the offer, right? Not just a customer journey, but how do we advance this offer to drive more business value, more business outcomes for every single customer that we take on, and advance in the product the tools that are necessary for customers to get value. Again, we asked how many of you have these what we call offer journey maps. The vast majority said no. The last thing is lifetime value. I heard that come up this morning. How many of you are calculating or really, really use customer lifetime value as a metric? Yeah, almost nobody. I think, and we found that to be true too. Only 17% of these companies in the survey are doing lifetime value. That is the only way you are going to be able to truly understand which customer segments are the segments you should be going after, where to invest, where not to invest. So, when we get to this level, customer outcomes, customer success, customer services, whatever you want to call it, becomes a huge part of the overall LAER model. Responsible not just for driving adoption, but really changing the way the whole company works. This restructuring in an advanced model affects every single part of the business, not just inside customer success. And finally, we start looking at comp. And I swear to you, if you just take one thing away from this, you need to go and get your entire company to wrap their mind around this one sentence, right? You know all this arguing that goes back and forth and finger pointing, and look, everyone wins if the account grows. Sales wins, the product managers win, the CFO wins, the shareholders win, everyone wins if the account grows. And if we can just get that into our thinking, then sales will be happy to turn over the expansions and the renewals so they can focus on more new land deals, right? And eventually, you get to the point where everybody is united around a single engagement culture about driving the total spending of the customer. It's not my booking versus your bookings, it's our bookings. So, I think we are in a 4-phase journey. And my last, and by the way, there's the money slide, right? Go apply these tests to your organization, right? Go take this to your executive team and say, look at where we are in this model, and most importantly, look how far we have to go, right? We are not near the end, right? We are in the beginning. So, my last question I want to ask you, based on what you heard today, is your company still primarily a transaction-oriented company? Are you in the experiment phase, the effective, and the efficient? Let me just ask you. How many of you would say your company is still primarily a transactional company? Probably about 10%. How many of you would say you're in the experiment phase? How many of you would say you're in the effective phase? Maybe 20%. And how many would say you're in the efficient stage? 0. Pretty close to what we found out when we polled the TSIA members. 2%, and they're full of shit. Listen, it's not just a job, it's an adventure, right? We have a long way to go, and we have a long way to go to help the company fully comprehend the significance of this journey that we're all on, and we hope this helps. Have a good day.